I've done the worst Latin name, I've done the best Latin name, I've done the worst common name, but there's one thing I haven't done. Good content. So today I'm going to rank the 32 best animal common names in a 5-stage bracket. So, if you don't know what I mean by best name, you'll probably figure it out pretty quickly. First up, we have the king cobra versus the unstable paper wasp. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the king cobra is technically not a true cobra, but who cares about true and false anyways? Plus, it's really the king of the cobras, since its main claim for the name is that it feeds almost exclusively on other snakes. Overall, it's a pretty solid name with no glaring weaknesses. Over to the unstable paper wasps. This word unstable could mean volatile on a hair trigger, but its etymology is a direct translation of the Latin instabilis, its specific epithet. This actually just means unsteady in reference to the wasp's jerky motion. With that context, I think it's pretty easy to move on the king cobra. Next up is the satanic leaf-tailed gecko versus the tarantula hawk wasp. Satanic really just refers to the horns it has, but that's probably the sickest way to refer to horny protrusions from the head. Its tail is a mimicry of a leaf, and yeah, it's a gecko. The tarantula hawk is a species of wasp known for parasitizing tarantulas and other large spiders by depositing its eggs inside of them. The adults don't actually eat the spiders, they're herbivorous. The sting of the tarantula hawk is the second most painful sting in the animal kingdom, just behind the bullet ant. Overall, I'm leaning towards the tarantula hawk wasp. Satanic is a good sounding epithet for an animal, but the competition is too fierce, it just doesn't do enough on its own. And even judging based on what the name describes, the winner is the tarantula hawk too. Up next, we have the hanging thieves versus mouth almighty. Hanging thieves are a term referring to Diogmates, a genus of robber flies, which possibly could also be on the list. They've earned the name by taking this position once they've captured prey, hanging off a branch or something. Not by the neck, as the name would suggest, and the position is kind of weird, but robber flies are also known as assassin flies, because despite the name, they're ambush predators and not kleptoparasites. Mouth almighty is a cardinal fish, a relative of gobies found in Australia. A lot of these species are going to be from Australia, so try to get used to it. They're named after their habit of mouth brooding, where the father carries the eggs and young fish in his mouth. Now, this is not really unique to Mouth Almighty, it's pretty common across a lot of unrelated fish, so I really just want to lean towards the Hanging Thieves. It's an impressively grounded name compared to all the other names, which will sound like a high fantasy creature. Case in point, we now have the Stygian Shadow Dragon versus the Question Mark. The Shadow Dragons are a genus of dragonflies, which got the name because they're active at dusk instead of during the day like most dragonflies. Now, that's not as cool as it sounds. In general, daytime is preferable because the sun, and so everything is more active. But dusk works fine, especially if they prefer bipterans like mosquitoes and gnats. The Stygian Shadow Dragon in particular is named because it's slightly darker in coloration, I guess, and also it has Yamask in its Latin name. Question Mark is a butterfly, which you're going to want to get used to, because this is where the most insane naming conventions appear. It's a member of a group called the Commas, named after this marking on the underside of the wing. The Question Mark has another dot under it, so it was upgraded to a question mark. Now, it really looks more like a fermata, or at least a semicolon, but both of those are less cool. Even still, it's hard for me to say it's the best Latin name here, so I'm moving on the Shadow Dragon. Next up, we have another butterfly, the Restricted Demon versus the Red-Eyed Assassin Bug. The Restricted Demon is a member of the demon moths, presumably named after their feeding on important crops for humans like ginger and plantains, but nobody really has a good guess on why we call them that. It's restricted because of its narrow range, restricted to the southern half of Asia, though there's also, mountains here, so that's not an odd place for it to be cut off. The assassin bug, like the king cobra, is named for feeding almost exclusively on related species. Being a true bug, it doesn't have the chewing mouth parts characterizing other predatory insects like ladybugs, dragonflies, praying mantises, and antlions. Instead, it uses its piercing mouth parts to Capri Sun the unfortunate insect, impaling it, injecting venom, then drinking the innards, like a spider or velvet worm. You'll see there's a lot of demon devil stuff, and the assassin bug is cooler even without the name. Most importantly, Restricted Demon is only used by entomology nerds, while Assassin Bug is a common name. Next up is the Razor Grinder versus the Hyacinth Visor Bearer. Razor grinder is a cicada named after the sound it makes. If you've heard regular cicadas, it's pretty similar, but a bit higher pitched. And yeah, they're from Australia. The hyacinth visor bearer is a species of a hummingbird found in Brazil. I think it's named after the coloration surrounding the eyes and the coloration on the rest of the body. It's cool. It could have easily just been the spectacled hummingbird, but I can admit the razor grinder is way cooler sounding. Next up is the Komodo dragon versus the invisible rail. There are quite a few animals named after dragons, notably dragon lizards, but none of them really have the same draconicness as the Komodo dragon. Though based strictly on names, the word dragon is all it has going for it. The invisible rail is hard to find. To be honest, this one is probably the weakest. I could have replaced it with other honorable mentions. Overall, I don't love either of these, so I won't think too hard about pushing on the Komodo dragon. Next up, we have the black dragonfish versus the Australian ghost shark. The group of dragonfish or viperfish are named after their horrifying mouths of teeth and massive predatory eyes. Like many deep-sea carnivores, they use this thing as a lure, but they uniquely can produce red light, a frequency most fish can't see, allowing them to navigate by that light. Comparably, the ghost shark isn't as interesting, but we're basing this solely on the name. That being the case, it's a pretty good name. The ghost shark is a close relative of sharks, the chimeras or ratfish, known for its lack of scales and incredibly pale appearance, because living in the deep sea bleaches any coloration out. Now, I just said we're basing this solely on the name, but I can't help but consider the appearance. I'm only human, after all, don't put the pain on me. So the dragonfish wins. Next up, we have the ultimate shrew versus iron prominent. The ultimate shrew is a very obscure shrew native to Mount Kilimanjaro and the area around it. From what I've read, it's not that different from other related shrews or even shrews in general, and it's likely named ultimate for being last or out of reach. Point being, there's no way it can beat Iron Prominent. That's literally the name of a Paradox Pokemon. You're telling me Volcarona got one of these and they called it Iron Moth? Iron Prominent would have been a better name. Though I suppose it doesn't matter because it can't learn Quiver Dance, so nobody cared about it anyways. Long story short, Iron Prominent wins. Next up is the Exile Dagger versus the Hellbender. If you can believe it, it's another moth. Dagger moths are named after this pattern on their wings, and exiled is a mistranslation of the specific epithet exilus, which means slender, being confused with exilium, which means exile. The Hellbender is unclear where it got the name from. Theories range from its appearance, being bent on returning to hell, being bent as if it were tortured in hell, or maybe a name for the salamander just sounds like Hellbender. There are a couple of factors determining my judgment on this one. A, there's too many moths. B, Hellbender has more mystery. And C, I can only think of Exile as a Magic the Gathering thing, so Hellbender wins. Next up is the Red Terror versus the Ocelot Torpedo. The Red Terror is a species of cichlid named for its red coloration and its aggressive behavior. It's sometimes called the True Red Terror, but it's also sometimes called the Harlequin cichlid. The Ocelot Torpedo is the type species of a genus of electric rays, collectively called the torpedoes. The weapon is named actually after the fish, which is named after the Latin word for paralysis related to torpor. Ocelot means it has eye spots. Overall, the cichlid really feels like it's on the verge of being disqualified. I think the torpedo pulls ahead. Next up is the vampire squid versus the murder hornet. The vampire squid is named because of the webbing, resembling a vampire's cloak or the wings of a bat. It's also more closely related to octopi than squid, but who cares? A squid is just any cephalopod that doesn't exactly have 8 legs. The murder hornet is named for the Asian giant hornet. People tried to avoid using the name murder hornet because this was during COVID and Asia was getting enough hate, and also maybe people needed a break from murder in general. For those reasons, I'm going to give it to the vampire squid. Besides, those hornets never really lived up to the name. Next up is the thorny devil versus the tasseled wobbegong. The thorny devil is named for its appearance, which should be pretty easy to wrap your head around. Its scientific name is Moloch horridus, or thorny devil. Wobbegong is from a Darug work for the shark, apparently related to its shaggy beard, which is also referenced in its adjective. This is also referenced in its specific epithet, and also its genus name, but stripping away translations, isn't wobbegong a cool word? Maybe, but not more so than thorny devil. Next up is the ebony bog haunter versus the giant devil ray. Bog haunters are another group of dragonflies, apparently named because they don't really have that metallic luster to their eyes or body. Also, they live in bogs. As you might be able to guess by now, the devil ray is named after 2 horn-like protrusions from its head. These are called cephalic lobes, and they're used for arm-type things, but also for sensory behaviors and communication. I honestly like the name Devil Ray. It really feels like it's the one that earns the name Devil the most. but the Ebony Bog Haunter is too cool, so it wins this one. Next up is the Satanic Nightjar versus, take a deep breath, the Giant Thorny-Headed Worm of Swine. The Nightjar is named after the disgusting plip-plop sound it makes, which people for some reason decided sounds like an eye being pulled out. Guess people were morbid back then, but it's not beating the Worm of Swine. It's an intestinal parasite of pigs and also pretty much anything it can get its thorny head inside, from beetles, dogs, to even humans. Now, the thorns on its head are actually pretty small, more prominent in other related species, but the entire group is called thorny-headed worms. And also by giant, they just mean like 20 centimeters at full length. And finally, the Tasmanian Devil versus the White Witch. The Tasmanian Devil is named after the shrieks it makes, often compared to a dying boy. I don't have much else to say. It's found in Tasmania. The White Witch is a moth named after it being absolutely enormous, and it looks like a snowy owl. It's actually the largest moth by wingspan, and it absolutely beats the Tasmanian Devil out. On to the second phase. King Cobra versus Tarantula Hawk Wasp. I honestly like the simplicity of the Cobra, plus the Tarantula Hawk doesn't have much going for it besides the name of other animals. Hanging Thieves versus the Stygian Shadow Dragon. Easy call to make, Shadow Dragon looking like a strong contender. Assassin Bug versus Razor Grinder. Well, I think Assassin Bug is kind of weak by having one word that doesn't add anything, while Razor Grinder has two words working together. Komodo Dragon versus Black Dragonfish. Again, I can't help my biases of knowing about the animals themselves, and besides, these are pretty close, so I have no trouble giving it to the dragonfish. Iron Prominent versus Hellbender. Okay, Iron Prominent does sound like a Pokemon, but that doesn't necessarily make it good. The Hellbender is good. Ocelot Torpedo versus Vampire Squid. I don't love Torpedo, honestly. I think it's just okay. Not that I'm in love with Vampire Squid, but it's better. Thorny Devil versus Ebony Bog Haunter. The Dragonflies are both very promising and on opposite ends of the bracket, but I could see an upset. Finally, Giant Thorny-Headed Worm of Swine versus White Witch. I think Worm of Swine is just one hit after the next, while White Witch is relying more on a quiet dignity. Does this mean anything? I'm moving the Worm on to phase 3. Stygian Shadow Dragon beats out the King Cobra. Razor Grinder narrowly beats out Black Dragonfish. Hellbender beats out Vampire Squid. And that leaves Ebony Bog Haunter versus Giant Thorny-Headed Worm of Swine. This is probably the closest call for me. So, I called in my sibling and they said Worm of Swine. So, Stygian Shadow Dragon versus Razor Grinder. I like the Shadow Dragon. And Hellbender versus the Worm of Swine. Again, I like Worm of Swine. And yes, I think Stygian Shadow Dragon is a cooler name than the Giant Thorny-Headed Worm of Swine. End of video. Okay, bye.